Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 16 of the Really, Really Badly podcast. Today, Brandon and I are going to be talking about an idea. It's going to be pretty broad, but it's some good stuff to chew on, I think. We'll be chewing on it as we talk. So this is truly a live event for us, recording it 4 days before you'll see it. Today we're going to be talking about this idea of settling, staying put, settling down, putting down roots, that sort of a thing. And we're going to see where it takes us. This does come from a listener-suggested topic. So, if anyone out there has other topics, let us know. But also don't judge the quality of this one based off the fact that it's the first one we've had suggested. In case it's bad.
It won't be bad.
We don't want it to deter people from giving us suggestions. That's what I'm trying to say. So anyhow,
it's gonna be awesome. Glad you all
buckle
are
up. Here we go. Episode
16. 16.
We're excited.
All right, let's do it. And as always, leave us a comment or a rating. Let us know what you thought of it, or what you think of the podcast in general. Or if you just want to tell us how handsome we are, we're cool with that too. Yeah. ReallyBadlyPodcast@gmail.com or reallyreallybadly.com. In any of the show notes, you can leave a comment at the bottom of the page. Thank you for joining us. Hope you all are feeling well on this cold December's morn. Well, it's cold for me. I don't know if it's cold for you guys.
Yeah.
It might be beautiful and warm. I don't know.
It looks pretty gross outside right now to me, so it's probably pretty cold.
Okay.
Sun's not shining.
Well, depending on where our listeners are and what time of day they're listening,
or night,
that might not apply. Either way, welcome.
Welcome. Yeah. I did all that. Except I want some hate sent our way. I haven't got enough hate yet.
Yeah.
Some good hate mail. We fired up.
Yeah, come on. Where are you, haters? Not doing your job very well.
Okay, cool. So, settling.
So, I believe you received this suggestion.
I did.
So, kind of create a framework for me, for our listeners here.
All right.
Settling.
So, I'd say the base of this framework, the nice concrete foundation, is probably like this idea of, like we've heard the phrase, the grass is always greener, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, basis of that phrase being that not everything in life is perfect, or you can't have it all, sort of a thing. So there's this idea of settling, which we've heard, people say, don't settle. We've heard a lot in terms of, jobs or relationships. And then, so I think the base would be, this idea of like, kind of not it's not ever going to be perfect, I guess. And then the walls of this settling conversation, I don't know. I thought I'd have like 3 examples and I was going to get to walls and ceilings, but that's about it. We'll build the rest from that.
All right.
But that's what I
like.
think.
Yeah, so like settling down, but also like we're kind of talking about the pros and cons of learning to, or like, settling down or choosing a path, I guess.
And I think
without
that's
always
key, like choosing.
looking to other directions and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so basically the way that the subject was presented to me was, there's a lot of people our generation who want something stable, like a job or like a place or a community, friends, but when they have something in their life, like a job or maybe a location that they're at that's stable, it doesn't feel as special or magical as they thought it would, or that they want it to be. And so then it causes discontentment, and then to either move on to something else or to be looking for the next thing. And you never actually truly end up kind of just settling and sitting in something that could be really good.
Hmm. Okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Science would back you up on that. At least all of science. No, just some scientific studies would back you up on that. Um, I looked up a few articles about how commitment is in particular is hard in particular for millennials.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah. Did they say
and
why?
well, I mean, they speculate for sure. Um, Oftentimes um, they view the idea of settling down, in particular with like marriage and kids and a house and mortgage. They view that as more limitations
Okay.
from keeping them from exploring, you know, doing all the things that they want to do, from uh, achieving high in a career or something like that. They're kind of looked at as obstacles. That classic view of settling down.
Okay. Yeah. I thought it was interesting that a lot of what I found when I, search for settling or settling down or putting down roots, stuff like that, almost everything was in relation to like marriage. So like a romantic relationship getting more serious, which I thought was
Yeah.
interesting because in my mind, I think there's more aspects to it than that. Although yes, like that is can definitely be a big one. Um, but I also think of career could be a way to settle. Like if you're someone who doesn't have a super specific maybe path that you're going, and you've tried a few different industries or different job types, choosing to settle on one of them would be a way that I would think would fall under this category.
Hmm.
Also, just location of where you're at in terms of having a community or being a part of a local community, like physical community, friendships, things like that. I think so. I think the relationship side is important, but I think also it goes beyond maybe just romantic, like marriage
Hmm.
relationships as well.
Yeah, totally. Because that's not going to fulfill every part about you or about your life. Like
Oh yeah,
a
yeah,
lot of people look
absolutely.
at it as that, right? Like, oh, once I find a partner, my life will, we get married and whatever, my life's just going to fall into place. Well, no, you still have a life to live after that. Like, you still have decisions to make with, now with this person,
Yeah,
your choices will be different and more informed. And hopefully you'll find a lot of good common ground there. But like, you still have a life to live, choices to make.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Because yeah, a lot of the articles I looked up were all about commitment in terms of or well, a lot of them were about commitment in terms of romantic relationships and things like that.
Yeah.
So the Pew Research Center, uh, PEW Research Center, reports that millennials are significantly less likely to be married than previous generations in their 20s,
Okay.
which I don't think is necessarily news to anyone. And a recent Gallup poll found that a percentage of 18 to 29-year-olds who say they are single and not living with a partner rose from 52% in 2004 to 64% in 2014.
Wow.
And then marriage among 30-somethings has also dropped 10%. And the percentage of people living together without marriage rose from 7 to 13%. So there's a bit of compensation there, but not a whole lot. Like, yeah, in this article, this is by scientificamerican.com. This kind of suggests that um, this has a lot to do with how individualistic millennials are
Mm.
and how they focus a lot on their own happiness and kind of living their own life and doing their own stuff, that they can't really accommodate a partner necessarily. That's one uh, reason that they give for this.
Okay. Yeah.
But I would also argue, and I think this article does say this later on, I would argue that it's also because of that whole limitations thing, right? Like, because we have so much opportunity to travel or to see the world or to try this career, try that career, get a degree in this, get a degree in that, we're less, yeah, we're less motivated to maybe settle down or to just pick a path and see it through, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think
yeah,
this, and I think this ties in closely with our, our episode on choices paralyze. Um,
yeah. I don't
it,
think that one's been released yet, but yeah,
are you sure?
I think that's the live one, isn't it?
Oh, you're right.
Yeah. So,
Time is a strange thing on the internets.
but
Um, so
yeah.
it's closely tied with an episode that will be coming out in a few weeks.
Hmm.
But one of the things that I thought about when thinking about this subject was just with mobility of people and how much we've moved around and how much it seems like our generation has been able to see the world uh, overseas and just
Hmm.
locally being able to take a road trip because we've got cars that are a lot more gas efficient nowadays. You can go a lot farther for cheaper, and I had the thought of like even probably like our grandparents' generation and then back. Um, didn't so much have that. I think there was a lot more of people, they grew up in their town, maybe stayed in their town, maybe moved once, like when they were married to somewhere else, and then
Hmm.
that's probably about it. And then I just think a lot about our generation, just the people that I know who have either moved a couple of times or really, really far. And just there's a little bit of a contrast there. It's pretty interesting. And
Hmm.
like you said, I think, yeah, because there's this a lot more choice, a lot more options opened up to us, that we can even consider that, or that it's easier for us to maybe delay that quote unquote settling down or
Hmm.
staying put somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there are a lot of factors for sure, but I guess we can come back to this if you want to answer this later, but
Mm-hmm.
I'll just ask the question. Do you think this is a bad thing?
Yeah, like people not settling, you mean, or that we just
Yeah,
have
or
the
kind of
problem or
yeah,
the
yeah, is
anxiety?
the decrease in people settling down, whether it's in this specific sense of owning a house, having a family, having a spouse that you stay married to, or if it's just in the settling into a career and sticking with it. Either way, like this kind of decline in settling down, how we've defined it, is it a bad thing?
Yeah. And yeah, maybe we'll just spend the rest of the episode like answering that. But I think my short answer would be it depends on the individual's like goals, I guess. Um, but the one thing everyone has to realize is that we can't have it all. So there's a point where you're gonna have to kind of decide, right? Like, are you going to be an incredibly career oriented person who is going to need to be able to follow a job wherever it might lead you, and how does that then look in regards to relationships with friends or community or romantically or how or whatever.
Hmm.
And if you choose that, you're gonna have to realize that you're always gonna have that. Well, is there something better along the lines of um, relationships or something, right? Because there's always the idea of like, oh, there something better out there is always going to be there no matter what.
Hmm.
Um, and so I think taking the time to think about that, think about what your like priorities are, is important. And for those people who truly want that, it can be good. Uh, but I think that's probably fewer than we might think. I think for most people, it's probably a healthy thing to have a sense of place.
Hmm.
I think that's just kind of the way we're made. I think we are very relational, and that people being involved in a local community and having close friendships is important. And that's kind of a
Hmm.
more like emotional thing that we all need.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
guess I would say, like, in general, it's probably not great, but not like all the time. I don't think you could say across the board it's bad necessarily.
sure, sure.
So anyway, this kind of leads, and then I when I was just googling around, I googled the word "just settle," thinking seeing if there'd be a like article or something brought up, and it was a little hard to find anything with that specific word other than just a bunch of like dictionary sites that had definitions. And one of the ones I read just for the word settle was resolve or reach an agreement about an argument or problem, about something. And I thought it was kind of an interesting way to look at this subject because, to resolve or reach an agreement, to like find a place of decision kind of in regards to some of this stuff. So when we talk about romantic relationships, when we talk about where you're going to live, and I thought that was interesting because I think until you've kind of made that decision or something, there's going to be some kind of like tension or anxiety about those things because we have so much choice and because we have so many options in front of us.
Yeah, I wish that we had put out the episode about Choices Paralyze at this point, but it's yet to be released just because it would have some basis for us. But I looked up this article that I wish we'd had during that episode about, choice can be demotivating. It's an article written by Sheena S. Iyengar from Columbia and Mark R. Lepper from Stanford. And it's entitled, When Choice is Demotivating, Can One Desire Too Much of a Good Thing? And it sets up this idea that in our current culture, there's this generalized feeling of we need to have it our way. And the more choice we can have, the better our lives are going to be. And this article, they go through a bunch of different studies and things like that. But one of the things that they conclude towards the end is that even when choices are self-generated, it is possible that overly extensive choices may have demotivating consequences. Okay. Because people seem to enjoy extensive choice contexts more than limited choice contexts. They may sometimes prefer to make available to themselves many more choices than they can handle. Many more choices than they can possibly handle is what it says.
Okay.
So I like that because as we're talking about all these different things that we can do with our lives because of our ability to travel and different careers that might be open to us, more education, things like that. There's just so many choices out there and it's great, but if we don't ever choose one and settle down into what we're good at or something that we love, then we're just going to be chasing these choices forever.
Right.
We can't possibly handle them all.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And it's interesting. So that what you just said about kind of the culture of have to have it our way, I think is really interesting because I came across this article that is titled 17 Signs You're Ready to Settle Down. And I don't disagree with all of it, but I definitely disagree with a lot of it. And so, and mostly just from the standpoint of where this is coming from, which I think ties into that, like, your way. I mean, even just the title, right? That you're ready to settle down. And I would argue, and I'll go through some of these, but just up front, I would argue that, like, you're probably never really ready to. It's a choice that you have to make. Sometimes alongside like a spouse or romantic partner as you decide to build a life together. And I think a lot of what this article talks about, which you'll see in a second, or a lot of what it lists is very, like you kind of mentioned before, individualistic or like personal. I don't want to use the word selfish, but like kind of like personal, without the thought of like other people around. And I think that a big part of this idea of like settling down or putting down roots or whatever is deciding to start investing in other people or start creating a life where then you can, just talk about like the classic, what you first think about is like getting married and settling down and having kids, right? Well, in order for you to be able to like care for these other human beings you're going to have in your life as kids, you're going to have a set of, self-responsibility habits or whatever set up. You're going to have these things in your life ready to then like unselfishly provide for somebody else. And I think that that's a big part of this, like settling down is not so much like you focused and kind of more self-sacrificing to other people, I guess, or unselfishly serving. So anyway, let me read some of these. So this one was funny because it's just we talked about, when we talked about our that kind of action episode and talked a lot about like feeling versus discipline. I think this is something that I think has become very apparent as we've as we've done more and more episodes. It's just so obvious that like we're going to have to address this over and over again about like we need to not only we need to structure our lives over something other than like how do I feel about this thing. So they have this. So like their first reason for what, like when you know you're ready to settle down is you suddenly start planning projects that will take more than a year and think of them as short term, which I think is funny because you just suddenly like, oh, just without any like, I just happened to start planning year-long goals. Like when we talked about this in our goals episode, like I don't think we naturally do that. Like we don't. We just, like if you have to be intentional about this, like you suddenly start planning. So I thought it was kind of funny. And then this one right here was a big one as far as that like kind of selfishness thing goes. But when you are ready to listen and compromise on almost anything, from breakfast to money, and that one struck me as odd too, because like when is anyone ever ready to selflessly be like, yes, I will put aside what I want for what you want. Like I don't think you're ever like ready or just like happen to start doing that. Like that's something that
your average millennial is not going to.
Right. Yeah. Or at least at least we could say that about like I mean I know that's going to be something that's going to take work and a life that is choosing to settle, not just like, oh, I happen to be settling down, And then here we get into a bunch of feelings ones where they say you no longer feel like you might be missing out on something better. Like I mentioned before, that feeling is always, 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 always going to be there, whether you have a great life or you have like a really hard life or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like there's, if you, I think we naturally have that feeling of like, of like missing out, fear of missing out type of a thing. And it's not necessarily a bad feeling, but you have to learn how to deal with it in your life. And if you're just waiting for that to like magically go away, it's not going to just go away on itself. Like, and that's why we have, decisions, intentionality, discipline set up in our life, or why I'd argue we should, so that when feelings like, am I missing out? Is the grass always greener? We know how to deal with that. We have a plan for how to react to that to keep us on track with our goals and what we want, what we want to accomplish or have out of life. And then this one cracked me up. Like when it doesn't feel like settling down, but rather continuing the adventure. I don't even know what that's supposed to mean. Like, doesn't feel like settling down. Like, I don't know. That one's weird. This one I loved is, so you're ready to settle down after you've started saving money for a house, car, or baby. And I'm like, I think again, like you have, and I actually just last night I had a conversation with a coworker. He's a bit older than I am. He's in his 40s. And I don't know how we got on the topic, but three of us were talking and somehow came up about like saving, like we were talking about like retirement or something with our work. And he was like, there's one advice I could give to you young guys. It would be to start putting it away now. He's like, I know you're not making as much when you're in your 20s as you will, when you're in your 40s. But like, even if it's just a little bit a month, you need to put it away. And we talked about this last week a little bit too. But it's like, yeah, like after you've started, like, you've got to like be intentional about that kind of a thing, I guess. Not just like, oh, I'm like ready when I eventually do it, and which will never happen, as my coworker was saying. Yeah. And I mean, there were some other ones. I don't need to like go through every single one and like bash all of these. There were some. This one, you're fully prepared to put someone else ahead of yourself. Like,
oh man.
So you mean like after I'm dead and like
after I've reached nirvana, maybe?
Yeah, like fully prepared to put someone else ahead of yourself. I will never be prepared to put someone else ahead of myself. I might have to make that hard decision to do so, but I'm never going to be fully prepared to do that. I'm never going to feel like a tension to not do that. Like I'm always going to. It's always going to be like a tug. And I think there was the kind of insight I got from reading this article with how just where they were coming from with it, like the orientation of how they were like making these points. Like I think that if this is how we're approaching, settling down or whatever, then like we're never going to get there. I think we would be approaching it wrong, from a kind of a wrong attitude of it. And the last one they mentioned was the best of all of them, which is when you're emotionally, spiritually, and financially stable. So,
all at once?
Yeah. So.
Oh, jeez.
Anyway, I thought it was interesting, and I guess I just don't think that that's like a good way to say like when you're ready to settle down. I don't think anyone's necessarily ready, but it's a choice that they make because they see it as a way of accomplishing certain things in their life. And some of the things I listed that I thought of about like reasons why you might want to is I think it helps you learn to take care of yourself. I think that it can teach you personal responsibility. And this is, yes, this would apply if you're talking about like, marriage, getting married, settling down, having kids, but also in the other ways we talked about, whether it's, kind of committing to a career or even just an industry and going to get good at that thing, whether it's getting involved in a local community and getting to know the people around you, whether it is like the location of you more like physically staying put. I think that it can teach you a lot about personal responsibility. Traveling is awesome when you can do it. But I think I've definitely met those people who like travel from place to place to place, relying on people they know, opening up some space on the floor for them for a few nights at a time. And that's great. But like, how long are you going to let someone else, pay for the couch in your life? Like eventually, if you choose to kind of stick in a place and settle, teach yourself how to take care of yourself. I think there's a lot of value in that, which when we're talking, a lot of this where I was like, you should be more of like a kind of selfless mindset when you think about settling down in terms of like eventually having a family. You're going to have to know how to take care of yourself before you ever try taking care of, kids or doing it with the spouse. So I think that's a really important aspect of it. I think that it can definitely help to develop contentment in your life. We've talked about this a little bit, like, making do. But I think that if you are choosing to like kind of stay in a place and settle and, recognize that you might have this feeling of missing out that things could always be greener, yet learn how to deal with that, it can teach you a lot of contentment. And then I think it can also, and this is maybe more depending what your goals are, but I think it can make you more effective in those goals, both, communal, relationally, and personal goals of accomplishment, depending on what they are, obviously. But
yeah, I had two thoughts kind of that I had to write down to remember. Just kind of listening to your list there. One of them, I was told by an older friend of mine who has kind of lived a bit of a nomadic life a little bit, just kind of through his past. And he gave me his thoughts on childhood. He's a dad.
Okay.
Of maybe 7. Yeah, I think she's 7. His daughter's 7 now. And he said something I really liked. He said that he thinks parenthood is the next he thinks that parenthood is the next stage of personal evolution for humans.
Okay. Because
he says there's nothing else in the world that will force you to grow up like being a parent. And I mean, hopefully hopefully you're completely ready and completely prepared and completely whatever, but that probably isn't the case for in different ways. Like, and learning to care for another human that is literally useless without you, or not useless, but they can't take care of themselves at all. He says it's the way that we evolve, and it forces you to evolve. It forces you to be selfless, and it forces you to make decisions not based on yourself. And if you're just waiting for a feeling, if you're just waiting to, like I joked earlier, to reach nirvana, where you suddenly don't think about, where you are completely ready spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically to care for a small child.
Yeah.
And to put yourself aside, or, and your spouse, hopefully, if you're married, like that will never come. And that kind of brings me to my second thought. I have a few friends who are a little older, and I feel like a bit of a hypocrite talking like this because I'm single and I've barely done anything to change that, but they kind of are always talking about when I have kids, when I have kids, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. I'm going to raise them like this, I'm going to raise them like that. And I think it's great that they want that. It's just, I have to bite my tongue a little because I'm like, time's running out.
Right.
Like, and I don't want to tell you how to live your life or anything like that. But like, you kind of need to, at one point, really think about what you want and what you want your life to look like long term. And I think millennials are in danger of staying in this place where they're always thinking about what new cool thing they could do or place they could go, but they don't actually sit down and think about, what do I want my life? Yeah, what are my long-term goals? Because if it's to be a parent, and it doesn't have to be that, right? Like,
right.
You could want to be single your whole life, never have kids, and focus on your career or focus on travel or do something big for the environment. That's totally fine. It's just that if you don't sit down and really think about that, time might run out on you because there is so much choice and there's so much distraction and this world is really cool. We get to do all this awesome stuff, right? And it's all good stuff. It's just, yeah, my heart goes out to those people, some of my friends, just because I'm like, and again, I don't know their situation. I don't want to tell them how to live their life, but I don't want them to miss out on having something that they've really, really wanted. You know, I don't want them to just let their life pass them by, and feel like they missed out on that because they were too paralyzed by the choices or waiting to feel perfect, waiting for it to feel exactly right.
Yeah. No, totally. I really, really like that idea. And it's one that, at the beginning you said, I kind of feel like a hypocrite or whatever. And a lot of these ideas, obviously we don't have it figured out either, but I don't think that means we can't talk about it and say this might be a problem, even in maybe my own life. But yeah, I mean, time is precious. And I've definitely had those moments too of talking with people who are, either like, 10 years older than me or whatever, 20 years older than me. And they talk about life as if they have like the entirety of it before them. And you're like, dude, you better get on it then. Like, you better really like what are you doing? What are the actionable steps you're taking to make this happen? And then it makes me look at myself and go like, okay, like I need to get real with me because I can sit here and talk about some of the things I dream about and talk about, I was talking about some of that actually last night with a different coworker who's much older. He's like getting ready to retire. And, I almost felt myself kind of being like as I'm in the middle of the sentence, I'm like, I wish I wasn't talking about this because now it's making me have to be like, well, what am I doing about it? And I even said at the end of my, like, after I was telling him kind of some of the things I was thinking about the future, I was like, but these are just like, as of right now, they're just some thoughts that are kind of just baking still. And he was like, no, that's fine. Like, it's fine to dream or whatever. And he's like, but at the same time, yeah, I totally get what you mean. Like, where you kind of look inward and go, like, yeah, I need to get real with myself as well.
Yeah. Cause and I like that view of all my life's all before me, that's a cool, positive view. And I like that. And it is never too late to try to make your life look like the way you want it,
Absolutely.
I really believe that. But I think, time is our most precious commodity that we have. It's not money. It's not ability. It's not, it's time. That's the only thing you can't reproduce,
Right.
Or make more of.
And I guess that's, I know this conversation's kind of been like all over the place.
All over.
Which is okay. Maybe people won't enjoy it as much, but it's been good for me to just kind of think about it. And I guess what I'm kind of thinking about right now is, so like, we're getting into like time, if it's short, and we're talking about settling and some of the positives. And I think a lot of these positive things people do want, they're just like, I want them in the future. And it's like, well, if you want them in the future, you kind of got to be doing some things, aligning your life to get there. And I guess maybe one of the points we would make would be, time is of the essence. So figure out what it is you want to settle on, sooner rather than later, and then do that. And I do what you like to say. It's never too late to if if it has been waiting long, don't ever think like, oh, I'll never get there, it's too late or whatever, because there's so many stories we could get to that of people who haven't done that. I think the classic one is the KFC guy, Colonel Sanders. I don't even know his real name.
Yeah.
But I think he started in his 50s or something like that. Like,
really late.
He started really late in life, and then now he's got this, he's dead now, I think, but he had this incredibly successful these restaurants. So again, yeah, it's not, and that's just one area of business, financial success, but it isn't too late, but it also kind of could. Yeah. It could be though, at some point. So
yeah, you gotta be mindful of that. Yeah. Another thing that I thought was really cool as I researched this a little bit, this topic, is there's this article by Karen Swallow Prior in The Atlantic, and she wrote, it's called The Case for Getting Married Young. And we're talking about marriage and kids and stuff a lot, but I think this could apply to a lot of other things. But I really like her tagline. It says, it can be beneficial to make marriage the cornerstone rather than the capstone of your adult life. And what the article is kind of saying is that everyone a lot of millennials look at marriage as this thing that's going to limit them. It's going to put a damper kind of on their life and make it not as fun, not as easy to do the things that they want to do, and go, less adventurous and all these things, which it could be. Yeah. I mean, sometimes it becomes that for people, but she's arguing that it can actually be the cornerstone of your life where you can grow from this place of security and strength and mutual support, right? And so it becomes more important to find a partner that's going to support you and that's going to be adventurous or whatever your values are, share the same beliefs and values.
Yeah.
And I really like that because I think that can apply to a career as well. It can apply to a community or a place that you live, right? You can make it, if you make a good decision, a decision that lines up with your values, what's important to you, what you're going to love and enjoy in the future, then it's going to help you build a life that you love, It's not going to be this thing that, limits you and keeps you stuck in one place. If you can make a good decision, it can be a cornerstone, it can be the building blocks of a really good life. Yeah. And I like that kind of switch, in mentality. I think
that's a good idea. And I like that idea of building block. Because I think another thing it can do is help you to understand then what to say no to, or at least not right now to. Because if you're trying to build something using it as a building block, there's going to be some materials you don't want to build with. And I think that can be also, when it comes to this choice and choice is paralyzing and way too much choice, that can be a really good thing to have in your life to actually make some progress in one area.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot more could be said. It's a lot.
I know we're kind of all over today.
Yeah, and this is this is a topic I've been kind of thinking about just as I'm about to be at this place of work for a year, which is the longest I've worked somewhere. And it has been really cool to kind of sit down and just think about, man, like I feel like I've been able to accomplish a lot more just being here for a year, doing the same thing, even though it's maybe a little bit of mundane, but I feel like I've actually accomplished more just being in this place for a longer period of time, which has been cool. So I just kind of wanted to, talk about it a little bit, and I'm sure some other conversations will sprout from this one because we did touch on a lot of other things that can turn into more conversation.
Yeah.
I think it can be valuable, and I think that, people should contemplate it a little more for their lives. I mean, I need to contemplate it more for my life, because I definitely have those thoughts of like, oh man, I'd love to go live in the Pacific Northwest for a season of my life. But then when I really think about it, it's like, but like I really do like Colorado. It'd be a great place to raise a family, like where I'd like to be. And so it's like, I got to ask myself, like, what's going to actually accomplish a goal here? Like, should I really be thinking about potentially moving somewhere really far away for like just a couple years and postponing all of the good friendships and depth that I could be growing here? Like you said, long term, what's your long-term goal? What do you want? So
what are your values? Well, I mean, I hope you come to the Pacific Northwest. I mean, you can put those goals and values aside if you want.
Yeah,
Just
I mean,
saying.
whatever.
If you want to be a good friend. I mean,
All right. Well, yeah, thanks for this conversation. I hope it wasn't too all over the place for people, but yeah, let us know what your thoughts are if you want us to kind of focus in on an aspect we talked about in a future episode. Yeah, it's good.
yeah,
It's good just to contemplate sometimes.
yeah.
Get the
Get the
juices flowing.
get the coal churning.
Sure. I think it's time to end
get
it.
Get the old brain working. There we go. Jeez.
We'll link to the articles we mentioned and like the study Brandon mentioned in the show notes page, reallyreallybadly.com/episode 16. So check it out if you're interested. And we hope people will have a good Christmas. Yeah, Christmas will have happened by the time the next episode comes out.
I think that we'll have. Oh yeah, is that right? Yeah.
So have a good Christmas. We hope you had a good Christmas. Have a good Christmas. See you on the next episode. New Year's will be after that. It's good stuff.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, guys. Really appreciate it. I'm really flying by the seat of my pants here.